He came into the Hungarian Grand Prix with fire in his eyes. This wasn't just another race, it was Charles Leclerc's shot at redemption. After a string of disappointing weekends, inconsistent car performance, and Ferrari's trademark chaos, Budapest was supposed to be different. For once, everything looked like it was falling into place. Pole position secured with a perfect lap on Saturday. The SF25 was dialed in. The pit wall had a strategy. Leclerc had belief. The opening moments of the race only confirmed it. He got off the line cleanly, defended into turn 1 with razor-sharp precision, and began stretching his lead. It was controlled, clean, clinical. As the laps unfolded, the signs were promising. McLaren was holding position, Red Bull wasn't threatening, and the car balance looked stable. But in Formula One, momentum is fragile. One misstep, and everything changes. Behind the scenes, the Ferrari pit wall was already cracking under the pressure. Despite pre-race strategy discussions, something shifted. Telemetry readings, perhaps tire data, or simply panic. Whatever the trigger, Ferrari made a fateful decision to call Leclerc in for his first pit stop several laps earlier than planned. The call came suddenly, without the usual build-up or dialogue. Box this lap, no discussion, no warning, just a blunt instruction. Leclerc complied, but his voice betrayed him. There was no anger yet, but there was confusion. This wasn't what they'd agreed. This wasn't the plan. And in that moment, the race took its first wrong turn. By pitting early, Ferrari sacrificed the tire offset advantage they'd planned to use against the McLarens. It handed strategic control to the competition. Worse, it locked Leclerc into a long second stint on tires that hadn't been proven to last. This wasn't just a tactical shift. It was a breakdown of trust. When you take your driver out of the loop, when you abandon the race day plan without real-time explanation, you're not just changing strategy, you're telling him he's no longer part of the decision-making process. And for a driver like Leclerc, meticulous, data-driven, emotionally invested, that's more than a mistake. It's a betrayal. The second stint began like a collapse. Leclerc returned to the track surrounded by uncertainty. And almost immediately, the signs were ominous. Tire degradation started earlier than expected. The rear grip was fading. The McLarens, who had stayed out longer and preserved their rubber, began chipping away at the gap. Leclerc kept his head down. He asked for information. Sector times, gaps, tire tongue, anything that might help him manage the situation. But Ferrari's responses were clinical and cold. There was no sense of urgency, no creative thinking, just numbers, static instructions, maintain delta, fuel target +1. It was the language of engineers, not racers. It lacked the human connection that builds trust on the radio. Then came the turning point, the order to start fuel saving, midway through the stint, on tires that were already on life support. At a circuit like the Hungaroring, where rhythm and flow are everything, fuel saving can destroy your lap times if executed poorly. And this wasn't just poor, it was disastrous. Leclerc was suddenly asked to lift and coast through corners where precision and braking timing were essential. He questioned it, his tone sharp now, moving past confusion into frustration. Why now? He asked. We'll lose too much time. But, again, the reply was cold. Target fuel number required. No explanation, no strategy shift, just blind commitment to a flawed plan. With his pace collapsing and his car unbalanced, Leclerc became a sitting duck. Oscar Piastri closed in and passed him with ease. Lando Norris followed shortly after. Both were on better tires, better strategies, and most importantly, better communication. The Ferrari had become unmanageable, not because of its mechanics, but because of the people orchestrating its race. That was when it began to hit emotionally. You could hear it in Leclerc's voice, the edge, the resignation, the anger. He wasn't just losing positions, he was losing faith. We've lost all competitiveness, he snapped. This is extremely frustrating. But even then he wasn't lashing out. He was pleading for logic, for coherence, for someone to step in and save the situation before it unraveled completely. But Ferrari had already lost the plot, and now they were dragging their lead driver down with them. By the time Ferrari finally reacted, it was already too late. The tires were done, the pace was gone, the strategy was crumbling, and still there was no clear leadership from the pit wall. When they eventually called Leclerc in for his final stop, it felt like desperation rather than decision. No clear reasoning, no sense of timing, just delay. He came out into traffic, far behind the cars he'd been comfortably ahead of earlier in the race. The new tire compound didn't help. The balance was off. The car no longer responded to his inputs the way it had in the first stint. It was as if the SF25 had lost its soul. But the most striking moment wasn't technical, it was emotional. The silence between radio calls, the short clipped responses, undrivable that were just one, heavy with meaning. Everything he was feeling, not because the car had a mechanical failure, but because Ferrari had made it undrivable through strategy alone. When your team ignores real-time feedback from the driver, the person actually feeling the car's behavior corner by corner, you're not just mismanaging a race, you're sabotaging your own potential. Leclerc had been trying to communicate, trying to offer insight, asking for a chance to course correct. But his words fell into a vacuum. When he emerged from the car after the checkered flag, there were no tantrums, no theatrics, just a deep, visible disillusionment. His body language spoke louder than any interview could. Head down, walk slow, no words, just the hollow look of a man who had watched his race, his team, and maybe even his confidence in Ferrari, evaporate in real dash time. This wasn't a one-off. That's the most damning part of it all. This wasn't an unlucky day. It was a reflection of a pattern that has haunted Ferrari for years, a chronic inability to manage pressure, to execute coherent race strategies, and to trust their driver when it matters most. We've seen it before: wrong tire choices, delayed pit stops, conflicting messages over the radio. Charles Leclerc has been the victim of these blunders time and again, and each time he returns, hoping something has changed, hoping that the most legendary team in Formula One has finally found stability. But races like Hungary prove otherwise. The data doesn't lie. Ferrari's early stop eliminated their flexibility, their second stint strategy ignored tire wear patterns, and the fuel-saving call was detached from the rhythm of the race. From a racing perspective, it was strategic malpractice. From a human perspective, it was heartbreaking. Leclerc has carried Ferrari more times than he's been rewarded. He's put in miracle laps, fought through midfield chaos, and extracted results from cars that didn't deserve them. And yet, when he needed his team to match his effort with clarity and leadership, they went silent. Or worse, wrong. The culture at Ferrari's pit wall seems paralyzed by indecision, overcomplicated strategies, fear of failure. And ironically, that fear keeps creating it. Because in F1 you have seconds to decide, and if your instinct is hesitation, you've already lost. Leclerc's outburst wasn't just frustration, it was a warning. A cry from a driver who knows his talent is being squandered, who knows that every time Ferrari fumbles a strategy, it's another step away from the world championship he dreams of, and who knows that his time, like every driver's, is finite. If Ferrari doesn't evolve fast, they risk losing more than just races. They risk losing the very soul of their future. Leclerc isn't just another driver. He's the emotional core of their project, the driver they've built around the man who could return Ferrari to glory. But if he starts believing that the team can't match his ambitions, he may start looking elsewhere, and who could blame him? There's only so long you can keep giving everything, only to be undone by people who are supposed to lift you up. Only so many races you can finish wondering, what if, before those doubts become decisions. So as we look ahead, the real question isn't about tire compounds or pit windows, it's about trust. Has Ferrari finally broken the one thing that holds a team together when everything else goes wrong? If you felt the weight of this story, if you're tired of watching greatness go to waste, then hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know what you think in the comments. Because Leclerc isn't just fighting for podiums anymore, he's fighting to be heard. And that should scare everyone at Ferrari.